Okay, so the first thing we need to do for this motion track is to create an image that will be used on the phone while we're doing this video shot of the cell phone. And it's nice in Photoshop, if we go into here and we hit create new, we can actually create a screen, an image with the exact same size as the phone. And if you go into the mobile presets, when you make a new document in Photoshop, you can actually select from preset sizes for all these different phones. And I actually have an iPhone 6. I'm going to use this as the template and just make sure it's set to portrait mode and choose that, hit create, or whatever phone you have, and here we go, there it is. So what needs to happen is this needs to be green so that it can be keyed out later, so that your thumb or any kind of other thing that comes over the screen can still exist in the shot and not be covered up by what you're doing. That'll make more sense when we start doing the actual track. So the first thing I want to do is just make this green background, and I'm going to just go into here and I kind of just select any kind of green really that's not too saturated or not too dark or desaturated. So I'm going to go right into right here, do that, paint bucket tool, green, perfect. And then all you need to do after that is create some tracking points in the corner of this image so that After Effects can use those to track the shot. So all we have to do is just go into the rectangle tool, make sure it's set to white, and do something like about that size, about there. I'm actually going to bring it in just a little bit like that. Perfect. And then make a copy of that and just make sure it goes into each corner of this image like that. Perfect. And then just to be safe, I'm going to make another one for the middle of the screen. Which is right there. Okay, there we go. So that is the image we're going to be putting on the phone for the actual video shoot of using the phone. And that'll make more sense when we have the actual shot. Okay. Okay, everyone. So here's the finished motion track with a quick animation of some pictures moving with the swipes. And I'm going to show you how this process works with 2D motion tracking and then using pre-comps to animate images inside of the motion track. And first of all, I'm going to just show one more time. That's what we're going to be doing. Okay, so I'm going to start with, I'm just going to delete everything and start from scratch. And we're going to start with just, let's see, just this. I'm actually going to cut off the end of the video. Let's see where. I'm going to cut it off right here. Right there. And the easiest way to do that is a shortcut. It's Alt plus right bracket. And that puts the end of the clip at the playhead. So if I moved it over here, I did Alt plus right bracket, it would end it right there. Undo. But if I did Alt plus left bracket, it would put the beginning of the clip at the playhead. And so that's a really nice way of cutting clips and videos and images and everything. Really just setting the in and out points of your layers really quickly in After Effects. So we'll start with that. And what I'm going to do too is I'm going to go to the end of this endpoint right here. And the best way to do it exactly without kind of guessing is just to hit the O button. O is in out point, and then I is in in point. So if I moved it to right here, that's the in point because that's where the layer starts, and then O is the out point. So I'm going to actually move the playhead to the beginning, and I'm going to show you one more shortcut, which is just left bracket, which means it puts the in point of the layer at the playhead. So if I put the playhead right here and hit left bracket, I would put the in point of the layer at the playhead right there. So I'm going to do that in the beginning again, hit left bracket. And of course, same thing with right bracket. If I move the playhead to right here and hit right bracket, it moves the out point or the end of the layer to the playhead. So left bracket does this, and right bracket does this. This is all based on the playhead. And then of course, Alt plus left bracket sets the in point, and left bracket places the layer at the in point at the playhead. Okay, so we've got that. I'm going to put this playhead back in the beginning and left bracket, place it right there. So I'm going to go to the out point with O of the layer right here. And all this extra time at the end of this composition doesn't need to be here at all. And the easiest way to do that is to drag this thing right here. This is called the work area. If I was going to place the work area right here and hit play, it would play along until I hit the end of it and then loop. So this gives you basically like this is the work area. This is like the selected area of a composition where you can work. So if I moved it right here and I put the playhead right here, it would do the same thing. It would start right there and then it would loop into the work area. So there's another easy set of shortcuts too for the work area, because what I can do is I can set the work area to be whatever I want, like that, and I can go up to the composition drop down right here and I can say trim comp to work area. And that means it'll make the composition will be made as long as whatever the work area is set to be. So what I'm going to do is use O. As long as the layer is selected, use O to get to the out point of the layer. And then I can use N to set the end of the work area, much like I can use B to set the beginning of the work area. So B and N will set the beginning and end of the work area. So B for beginning and then N for end. And I can set that really easily, and I just want this comp to be as long as the video shot by going to the out point with O and then hitting N to set the end point of the work area. So now I have the work area set to the exact duration of the video. Now I can go to composition drop down and sit and then hit trim comp to work area. Boom. There we go. So now the comp is exactly as long as the work area. And here's the shot that we're going to track. Perfect. And then by doing that, to start tracking, we need to open up this as a layer inside the layer tab, which is right here. So I can just do that by highlighting it and then double clicking it. And I go into this layer tab. And inside this, there's a couple other options we don't have to really get into right now. But this is where you would start the motion track. And you can see how this light blue area, this is the duration of the clip versus the duration versus the entire duration of the clip. So the actual video clip that we're using is almost a minute long, but we're only using from right here to right here. And you can see how this arrow changes right here. I can trim the endpoint of the layer from this timeline right here. So if I do that, you'll see how down here it changes, which we don't want to do that. But I'm just saying this is this is the actual usable, this is the used portion of the video that we shot, just so you know that. And so if I move this playhead right here, this playhead also moves. So it's important to move this playhead to the very beginning of this clip, because that's where we're going to start the motion track. So the easiest way to do that is to go into the tracker pane on the right side of the screen. If it's not there, if you can't find it immediately in your workspace, it's up here in Window, right here, Tracker. So we have this. First thing we're going to do is track motion. If you click that, this tracking point shows up. Now that's not what we want, because we need the track type to be different. Right now it's set to transform by default, and that's just one tracking point. What we need is perspective corner pin. Now when I select that, there's 4 tracking points now, and that's going to be great because we're going to use these tracker points right here and apply these track points to that. We're just going to drag like that and match it up like that. Now, so the outer box right here is kind of like the viewing area. So like and this inside box right here is the actual section of the video, like the amount of pixels that'll actually be tracked in After Effects. And if this dot or whatever's inside this box ever left this area, After Effects will use this area to look for it. So it's good to have this pretty wide, just so it knows where to look in case anything ever leaves this inside box. And then this is the actual tracking area. So the more area, the more it takes to track. So just so you know, to keep the tracking time down and the calculation time down, to keep this box like pretty small. And it's important too, because you need to have the box big enough, obviously, to find enough tracking data to track. And what it's actually doing is it's looking at the contrast of the image. So this green and this black of the screen and the white rectangle give it enough contrast in color to understand, like, oh, I should be tracking this and following it along the entire shot. And what you can also do, what I think is better, especially for phone screen replacement, is actually to put the middle of this tracking box right at the corner of the screen right here. And you can use the arrow buttons to finesse the placement too. So that's a good size. I would probably place it just a little bit, and you can use Control plus and minus to zoom in. I would probably set it to be like this. So it's going to be tracking, and I'm going to place this up here in the very corner like that with the arrow keys. So it's going to be tracking all this black, this corner of green, and then this rectangle, which is going to be enough contrast for it to understand what's going on. So that's set up. That's nice. We'll go to the next one. Same thing down here. Put it in this corner. Expand this box. Expand this box to encompass the green corner and the white rectangle. And make sure it's set up right at the corner of the screen with the arrow keys. Perfect. And then same thing here. Like that. I like making this outer box large because this is the area that's really easy to grab to move around, because you don't want to grab this plus. Like, that's going to really mess everything up. You make sure that stays in the middle of the inside box. And you can't really grab, you can grab the inside, but it's a little bit fidgety. I'd rather just expand the outer box and then use this area to grab. It makes it a lot easier. Okay, so going here. About right here. Expand this box like that. And good. So now we are set. This can be smaller. Now this is set, and you can tell it's pretty good because the line of the track follows the green line of the screen. So you can tell it's pretty much got the perspective of the phone screen set up. And let's see, sorry. Okay, that's great. Now I'm just going to hit analyze right here to analyze forward, and it'll do the motion track. Okay, so it's been tracked. This happened, and I can show you how to fix that. But otherwise, for the most part, it stays along the so let me just real quick, the reason why you're not seeing the track points when you hit play like this is because the timeline window, you can see because this blue frame, the timeline window has been selected. So if I selected this window, the layer window, and hit play, it'll play the track point so you can watch how it goes in real time. And that's the difference. That's why it's not showing up when you are clicking in here. So anyway, so we can watch the track. It looks pretty good. And just so you know, all this noise that happens, all these little boxes, these are individual frames. So this is, so what's it's saying right here is this is the point where the track is at this certain frame, and then this line is showing the path of where the track point is at each frame in time. And you can see how it writes on like that. That's because what it's doing is it's giving you a range of frames. It's giving you so many frames before the tracking point and so many frames after the tracking point. And as the frames as it travels along the animation and the video, then more of these frames will show up and kind of give you like the forecast of where the tracking point is going to go in the future. That's why it's writing on like that. So you can see how the crosshair right here is moving along at each box. At each frame, it's at that point. That's what those boxes mean. So as I hit play, you can watch it travel along of those boxes, and you can know which direction it's going and see exactly just like that. Perfect. So as it goes along, and the line connects them and shows you the path of where it's going at each frame. So that's just so you know what that means. Now at some point my thumb is going to cross over this tracking point and it's going to go haywire. I think it's pretty soon. It's right about now. Right about now. Now. Okay, so it freaks out. And we went over this in class, but I'll show you. I'll just go through the process of fixing this the way I would do it. Now, let's see. We've got, so that's the last frame before it flips out, basically. So the next one is a mess. But we still know, we still are able to guess where it should be. So, and it's also really helpful to have this tracking line of like the perspective, area of the phone screen, because we can just basically use this line right here to match along the phone screen right here, and we can use this line to match along the phone screen here. So as my thumb covers up the tracking point, we can kind of approximate where the point is by lining up those two lines. So this one is bad, but luckily it's still not really covered up entirely, so we can just move it and just make sure that the line, there we go, the vertical line lines up and the horizontal line lines up like that. Perfect. Control plus right arrow goes forward one frame. We'll do that like that. and line them up. One more time. I mean, it's going to be a few frames, really. Like that. Oops. So now it's clear. So now I can hit analyze forward again, and it'll reanalyze the track going forward. There we go. It's a little bit shaky, but of course the lesson here is, you know, don't cover up the track points. Okay, great. So the track is set. It's pretty good. Now I need to apply this tracking data to a layer, and right now there's no other layer to put this on. So I'm just going to drop in the iPhone home screen JPEG I found online, and I'm going to go back to the layer tab up here, have the track data. Now right now it's all grayed out because there's no motion source set. Now I can just select this layer again if I want, or if I'm back here, you know, I can change the motion source right here, this drop down, if I wanted to. But I'll just select this layer again. Current track, tracker 1, track type, perspective corner pin, perfect. And then you just go into edit target, and because it's the only layer that's in the composition, it automatically highlights. But if there was more layers, all the layers would be listed in this drop down. So I'll hit OK. Now nothing's going to happen yet until we hit apply. So I'll hit apply. Calculating. Bam. It's pretty set. So let's see how it goes. Let's see how it plays back. Now it's the exact size of the screen because we tracked the very corners of the phone. Oh, so you can see how it freaks out right there. So it looks like that ended up messing up. So let's see how, let's undo this and go back to the layer and see how this worked out to make sure that it stayed. Okay, so it actually didn't. Okay, even better. So let's fix it. So I'm just going to go to the next frame and reset that one just to be sure. Just like that. And I'm going to hit analyze forward again. And there we go. Okay, so it seems good now. Let's see. Okay, for some reason that last frame is bad, but it's just one frame, so I can just move this back to be right there. Great. And we just reapply the tracking data. Make sure the target's right. It's current track, tracker 1, perspective, perfect. Hit apply. Let's see how this goes. Okay, that fixed it. But obviously, and this is just me not being that precise with the covered up track point. That little bit of shakiness right there. Once again, rule of thumb. Otherwise, it's a great track and it looks very natural, except for the thumb, which we'll fix. So great. So the motion track's done. The data has been applied to a different layer, and for the most part, it's really good looking. So that from there, what I want to do is be able to have a bunch of images come up for the iPhone home screen. But before that, just real quick, we need to put the thumb back into the shot so it's not covered up by the phone screen. And that is actually pretty easy. So the first thing I'm going to do is duplicate the video layer and then put it on top of the home screen image. And so we're just basically back to the beginning again, because this video layer is covering up the phone screen. And if I got rid of the bottom layer of the video, all you're going to see is just a moving iPhone home screen, which gives you a better idea of how much movement this actually is doing and how precise the motion track is. Because when this is turned on, like, it looks like, oh, that'd be pretty easy to just motion track that. Like, there's not much movement going on. But like when you turn it off, there's actually a ton of movement going on. It's very, very subtle. It'd be really hard to do it by hand and make it look convincing. So there's that. And so now when we put another the same video layer on top of the home screen, we have to key out this green, which is why it's green, because it's a very easy color to key out, is what it's called. Like is if you're erasing that color from a video. So the way to do that is to just highlight this layer, and if you go into the Effects and Presets tab, now again, if it's not right here, it would be up in Window, and it would be, let's see, right there. So all you need to do is just search. Either you can search for key. You'll get a lot of different color keying and chroma key plugins, but the one we're going to use is Key Light right here. Now, Key Light is super powerful, and luckily it's not that hard. This shot isn't that hard to key out. And what we're going to do is just go to a shot like right there. And if you go into the effect controls for Key Light, which is from this layer that's selected, you just need to go to screen color. Right now it's set to black, with the eyedropper tool, and just tell it like, this is the color I want to key out. Now that worked, and you can tell because the thumb looks great. Like, you can't really tell a difference between, this is like the unkeyed thumb, this is the keyed thumb, and it looks seamless, which is great. That's what you want. And so it's basically done. I mean, for an initial key, it's really good. There's always some cleanup that needs to be done. And I'm sure you've all noticed the corners and the middle part still exist in this image. I can go in later and explain how to get rid of those, because it's easy to get rid of. It's a little bit more of a tedious process. And just so you know, even though it looks nice, it is a solid key. It looks like very natural. The only way to really tell how good the key is going is to go up to this view drop down, and by default it's set to final result, which is just the final key. If you go to status right here, this drop down, this actually shows you how good the key is, the quality of the key, where white is totally opaque, black is totally transparent, and gray is somewhere in the middle. So you really want the phone screen to be black, and not just kind of like a mix of noisy black and gray. And the way to do that is to go to the screen gain right here and just scrub up a little bit until this turns black. And that's basically what you want it to see. And also you want to see the thumb needs to be white, needs to be opaque. And this little fringe of gray is actually helpful because then it kind of gives it a nice fade. It's not like pixelated sharp cutout of a thumb. It's actually a pretty soft, nice fade. So if we go back to final result, you can see it looks pretty great. And if I zoom in, I mean, you can really barely tell that there's anything going on behind this thumb. And that's a combination of, just the quality of the video in keeping the color information so that it can be keyed out, the quality of the key itself, the quality of the color of the green is very, if I turn this off, you can see it's pretty even. There's a little bit of darkness up here, but it's a pretty even color of green. Like that's the hardest thing to achieve on film sets, is to keep the green as evenly lit as possible so it's so easy to key. And that's actually a nice thing about using a phone screen, because this is backlit, so it has its own kind of unique color, and it really helps the key basically to have it be backlit like that. And it's a one solid color because it's just an image of green, and all that stuff contributes to a really nice key. So I turn the effect back on by clicking this button right here next to the effect. It'll come back on and we can just enjoy this perfectly cut out thumb selecting this image. And that's great. So now we have, apart from the initial tracking points not being keyed out, we have a pretty solid motion tracked phone screen with some interaction that doesn't look fake. That's very nice. So now what we want to do is actually animate some interaction going on when the thumb touches the screen. So at that point right there is where I touch the button, which I'm just going to make it a image gallery, because this is kind of where it ends up, depending on what you want to do with your mock-up or any kind of interaction you want for your phone. It's up to you. For this, I'm just going to show you quick animations. Okay, so we want this to be animated and have a new screen pop up when the thumb touches this. And you can't really do that because right now there's only this one image that has the motion tracking set up for it. But there's a really easy way to make a composition out of this, and inside that composition you can have all the images and videos and stuff that you want, that will, and the composition will stay tracked onto the phone, and not just this one image but a whole composition. It's very easy. All you had to do, because this is already inside a composition and it already has the corner pin data from the motion track applied, I can just right click and go right here and say pre-compose. Now what that does is it brings up this dialog, and you can name whatever you want. I'm going to call this a pre-comp. I hit OK. It turns into, you can see the icon changed to a composition, and the color changed as well. It's important to know that the pre-comp is no different from a composition. It's called a pre-comp because you made a layer into a composition basically that was already inside of a composition. That's why it's called that. But there's nothing different about a pre-comp and a comp, just so you know. So now I can double click on this iPhone pre-comp, and I'll go into an actual composition that is the screen size, because it bases dimensions off of the image that was selected to pre-compose. So that's great. And now, because there is a composition inside of a composition, you can navigate really easily. Either you can go back and forth like this, because this is the timeline and there's all these compositions set up. This is where the compositions live. You can switch between them all. I'm just gonna, let me close these. Okay, so you have the main one, and then you have the iPhone screen pre-comp. Now I can just click between these two if I want, or I can use, because this comp is inside of this comp, I can go inside this comp, and then if I hit tab, it's a shortcut, I can actually navigate to the composition that it's inside of, which is a lot easier, I think, than remembering what the comp is called and going, because you're going to have a lot of compositions open at some point. It's going to be kind of confusing. You'll have more than one composition inside of a composition, so finding out which one to go to and everything can get kind of frustrating if you just, the best way to do it is like double click on this to open it and then hit tab, and it shows you this pre-comp is inside of this composition. So you can just go to that and click on it, and there you go. Anyway, so that's a nice little thing about navigation. Let me go back into it, and I'm going to add a picture. And this is going to be where all the animations take place that'll show up in this composition. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in this picture. Scale it down. Shift P for adding the position parameter. Just do that. So what I want, and what's nice is I've gone forward in this timeline, and you can see how it's updated now to the new image. But let's see, I want to find out exactly where I touch. So the thumb touches right there, basically. And at this timeline point, like I found the point where the thumb touches. Now it's at this, random time. If I go into this pre-comp, it actually is still at the same time inside this pre-comp. So I can use this as a marker to find out when I should be keyframing animations inside a different composition. So I have this, and I'm going to want, actually I'm going to put this underneath. So I'm going to want the iPhone home screen to scale up and fade out at the point of contact with the thumb. So I'm going to hit a keyframe and an opacity keyframe right here. That's where it's going to start, and then it's going to end about right here. And so I'm going to fade up and then fade out. And so this will be the animation. It's a little bit too slow, I think. So couple more shortcuts. Plus and minus on the keyboard will zoom in and out of a timeline. Also, that's down here. But it's a nice shortcut to, it's not going to zoom in the view, it'll zoom in the timeline. So you can see how closely you can kind of refine the distances of these keyframes a lot easier. Okay, great. So that's set up. I'm going to do a thing. I'm going to parent this tree picture to the phone screen, and then I'm going to use the phone screen as the driver of all the animations going forward. Instead of animating each layer individually, I'm just going to animate this one layer and then parent all of the pictures to it. So all the children, which will be all the pictures, will move based on what happens with the home screen. So it's a really nice way of making your animations more efficient. So I'm going to set it to be right here. Actually, what I'm going to do is wait till the animation's done right here. Then I'm going to parent the tree picture to the home screen. So you can see how it moves with the home screen, which is very nice. Now it's not going, the opacity is not going to transfer to the child. So the only thing that doesn't move is the opacity of, the only thing that doesn't work, the only thing that doesn't transfer over to children is the opacity setting of the parent. So it's not, this will not fade in with the home screen, but it will scale up with the home screen like that. So that's great. And actually, you can see a little bit. This tree picture isn't big enough right now. So I just need to scale up the tree picture so that it, when it fades on, it doesn't show a transparent background. Awesome. Great. So that's set. Let's go back to the original composition and see how this works. Cool. It's a little bit too late, I feel like. It kind of, that's really where the actual touch is. So I can just select these keyframes and move it to the playhead right here, and I move the animation back to kind of match where the thumb is. Yeah, that's kind of better. Cool. And now we go forward until the next, like the swipe, which is right here. So I'll go forward a few frames and find out where the swipe starts, which is right about really right there. And that's going to be where we start the next animation. So I'm going to actually set a position keyframe for the home screen, and that's going to be where it starts. And then I'm going to go back and find where the swipe ends. And that's going to set the duration of the animation. So it's kind of right there. And when I do that, I just move this out of the way. Now I'm going to do a thing real quick. It's a preset way of easing keyframes without having to go into the graph editor. If I highlight these keyframes and right click, there's a thing called Keyframe Assistant. And this allows you to kind of automatically set an ease that's not great. It's not a handmade ease, but it's better than just a linear kind of very rigid animation. So if I select easy ease, you can see how the keyframes change. You can see how the animation changes as well. It kind of it's more kind of gradual instead of like very abrupt, and that I think is kind of matches the. See, now it almost leaves too early. It needs to match. It needs to come back a little bit. There we go. Nice. Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, great. And another thing too, so I'm going to go after this animation ends. I'm going to put a new picture in. I'm going to scale it and change the position of it. Like that. And then I'm going to parent it to the home screen. Now it's important, I parented it after the animation was done, because now look what happens when the animation happens. When I scroll backwards, it actually moves down. Because I parented it at its current position after the animation was done. If I had parented it when it was right here, and it would sit on top of this tree picture, it would move out of the frame with the tree. But because I waited till after the animation was done and I dropped the image in, by default it goes in the middle of the composition, which is exactly where I want it. I just had to do a little bit of scale and position to like give it a nice frame, and then I can just parent that to the home screen that's already animated, and it'll automatically move out of the way. Okay, so that's done. Let's go back to this. So you can see how it scales like that, and then so I do one more swipe like that. So let's go to the beginning of that swipe, which is right about there. Set another keyframe. And then move forward a little bit. And I'm just going to go back to the composition. So like go to the end of the swipe, which is right kind of there. And once again, move this out of the way. Like that. Okay, that's bad. So it needs to be, let's see, it needs to be like, really like right kind of there. Nice. Okay. And then the next one is going to be right there. So I'm going to drop. Yeah, so I'm going to drop another image in. Scale this one and position it down. And then parent it to the home screen layer. So now when I, yep. And then go back to this and find the next swipe, which is, let's see, right there, right there. Good. Keyframe. Go back. Right there. Keyframe up. See how it looks. Pretty good. And now there's just one more image really that needs to show up there. I would put, I'm gonna put this one in there. Like that. Parent it. Perfect. Let's watch it back. That's great. There you go.